So, Zina, tell us a little bit about New Jersey's ninth district. What kind of folks live there? What's the history been in terms of who they've elected, et cetera?
Well, it's a very extraordinarily diverse district, not only sort of socioeconomically, but also ethnically. You have areas where you see $5 million homes, down to areas where significant portions of the population live below the poverty line. So it's very diverse in a lot of ways. It was a district that was redrawn in 2012, or rather after the 2010 census by Chris Christie. And actually, that was the last time my incumbent had a significant opponent because Steve Rothman's district was drawn out of existence, and so he ran in this one against pascrell. The district itself is high. There's a lot of immigrants, a lot of Spanish speakers in pockets of this district. It is sort of statistically, it's also contains the zip codes that have the highest uninsured rates in the state of New Jersey. So people I'm part of the reason I'm fighting for this district is to get people health care. I'm a supporter of Medicare for All, for example. It's also, this part of New Jersey also is very polluted. We get F ratings from the American Lung Association for ozone and particulate matters. And so, you have a combination of a polluted district with high uninsured rates, and it's probably disastrous for some families. So it's a district that I believe has been neglected for a long time. Part of the reason that I'm running is, I am guilty of having voted for my opponent for many times without really examining his record. And when I did examine his record, and when when the UN's IPCC report came out on the state of the climate last fall, it really sort of woke me up. And I said, I've got two young children. I've got to do this for them. I've got to do this for the next generation because our district is, he's had a very safe seat. It's a blue district. The state Democrats have protected his seat by giving him proper placement on the ballot. So it was, it was sort of my, if I don't do this now, I'm not going to, I won't be able to live with myself in the future, not having fought for the next generation. So that's a long-winded answer to your.
No, but I mean that is, we're interviewing folks who are challenging sitting Democratic, for the most part, sitting Democratic Congresspeople. And there's a lot of reasons why I think primary challenges should be supported broadly. And, part of people have different reasons, and that's very helpful to know. I mean, tell us a little bit about Bill Pascrell. He's been a congressman for how many years? And you say that, I think we're already seeing dividends, frankly, from your primary run. But also, I think, and maybe you can speak to that in terms of like his, what he has, how he's changed his sort of approach to things, knowing that there is a potential primary challenge. But I think it's also indicative of how deep a commitment may or may not be there. But tell us about Pascrell. You say you regret voting for him in the past. What have you come to understand about his representation that has caused that type of regret?
Well, there's a couple of things. Yes, he's been in the district since 1996, I think, is when he was first elected. Prior to that, he was the mayor of Paterson. There's a couple of things. And, you mentioned changing his approach to things. I'll give you a timeline, Sam, which kind of tells a lot about the congressman. I filed with the FEC to run in this district on February 28th. That was a Friday, I think. Over the weekend, there was an article that was published. I got some really good press early the next week saying, an environmental activist and a clean energy entrepreneur is challenging Pascrell because whatever, she read the UN's IPCC report and he hasn't done anything. Well, a week after that, I was listening to NPR, and the congressman gets on NPR, and it was the first congressman from the New Jersey delegation to support the Green New Deal. And 10 days after that, Sam, this is all public record, on March 18th, he receives checks from the Petroleum Manufacturers Association and the National Propane Gas Association. So, I mean, I'm not making this up. The timeline's straight out of like it's out of reality TV. So which congressman are you getting? Are you getting the guy who really, truly supports the Green New Deal, or are you getting the guy who is paying lip service to the Green New Deal because he's got a threat? Because you've got, somebody who's, coming up and she's not happy with the state of our world, has children and is a mother, threatening you. So that's just one thing,
I don't know if that was I don't know if that's a rhetorical question, but I can tell you what my answer would be in terms of, the fossil fuel industry. They understand how this game is played, and they are not giving your opponent money because they support the Green New Deal. That's for sure. I mean, and if it was something they were just hedging their bets, they would be sending you checks as well. And I presume they're not doing that.
No.
Right. Okay.
No.
I mean,
yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, continue, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, things like that. And so so it's sort of that, for lack of a better term, that lip service to it, right? And so you've got these high uninsured rates in large parts of Passaic County, which is in the district. And the congressman will talk about, lowering drug prices and getting health care to people and blah, 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 blah. And at the same time, if you go into federal filings, you will see that in just corporate donations, now I'm not talking individuals, these are just corporate donations, he has received $1.1 million from the pharmaceutical industry and from insurance. So wow. Who do I trust? Is it the guy who says he wants to insure everybody, even though large parts of his district have the highest uninsured rates in New Jersey? Or is it the guy who's getting millions of dollars from pharmaceuticals to really not do much? And it's that sort of pattern that you see over and over, and it does a disservice. And the reason he's been able to get away with it, he hasn't had a very, very serious challenger yet who will put a spotlight onto this. And I'm quite vocal. I'm not holding back in this race. This race for me this next election, 2020, is critical for the state of the planet. We can talk about environmental issues separately, but no one's ever questioned him sort of very public. Why is he voting for a Blue Lives Matter bill when I canvass the district and every other door talks to me about criminal justice reform, about brutality in the district? So, are you actually talking to your constituents? I mean, you were the mayor. We're in Paterson. Our first sort of canvassing area is in Paterson, and these are the things I hear at the door, and I hear them pretty consistently, very consistently. So I don't know if he's out of touch, but.
You were telling us about New Jersey's 9th District. This is a district that has been represented by Bill Pascrell for almost now 20 some odd years, a little bit more maybe. And he is a Democrat who has, at least since you entered into the race, voiced support for the Green New Deal. But that came after you entered the race. And on top of which, subsequent to that, he got a big couple of checks from the fossil fuel industry, which you have told us is also consistent with the almost over $1 million that he's received from the pharmaceutical industry. These are, folks can take money from wherever they are, but if you're looking for an indicator as to how these corporate powers think that he's going to vote, that's where you'd start, and I'm not sure where you would end, frankly, unless there was a voting record of challenging these powers, which which there's no indication. So, all right, let's just start with environmentalism, because that's what pushed you into this. You said the IPCC report came out, and you finally took a look into Bill Pascrell's experience and voting record, and you decided you had to run. Tell me about that. What drives you and what you think you need to do to win?
Right. Yeah. So those are good questions. So, the reason I was not many people are going to sit there and read the entire UN's IPCC report, but I work in clean energy, and I'm an environmental activist. So obviously the state of the environment is something that I take very seriously. And I thought I was doing enough, quite honestly, Sam, through my activism, through my professional life, to really decarbonize our society. But then I read the UN's IPCC report, and in that report, it basically said, this was last fall, it said that we have about 12 years to reduce our emissions by about half. Otherwise, we're facing runaway greenhouse. And runaway greenhouse means that it's something you cannot stop because of feedback loops, because it'll trigger other things that'll make it worse and worse and worse, simply put. That 12 years, to me, was a lot less. And the reason I say that is I'm in a graduate program right now. I'm getting a Master's of Science in Climate and Energy Policy. And every single climate model that I have ever looked at, without exception, has always overestimated the amount of time in which we have to react. So that 12 years for me was a lot less. And frankly, nobody knows how much less that is. So this next election cycle, 2020, becomes critical, not only for to get a president in there who understands and believes and feels the urgency of the climate crisis, but also to have a House representatives in there who will support, decarbonizing our world and decarbonizing it in a fair and just manner. So we're in a blue district. It's a blue. It's a D plus 16, I believe. It's a safe blue district. And I started looking through his voting record, and I saw things like votes to push forward the Keystone Pipeline, several of them. I saw votes that would have pushed the natural gas pipelines forward without audits of leaks. Now, and the reason, now I'm going to get slightly into the weeds here, and the reason why that was a bad vote was because even a small leak in a natural gas pipeline, because natural gas is so much worse than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, becomes effectively a coal-fired plant in its effect on the climate. So that lack of understanding, I don't expect every congressman to understand the science behind it. I don't. But I do expect them to do their research on what the consequences are on certain, in the devil's in the details in a lot of these things, on things like this. That's
part of the, so. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's also, this is the thing, is that I think that it's fair to say that you can't expect Congress people to have the level of sophistication and knowledge about these things that you do. You obviously work in that field. But the problem is that when you take thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars from the fossil fuel industry, your access to and the way that you absorb other people's opinions changes. And, you're going to defer to the expertise from the carbon industry and the fossil fuel industry because they're the ones who are lining your pockets, and you just aren't spending the time with people like yourself who might know better. And that's, to me, a big part of the problem. All right, we have about 3 minutes left. Give us a sense. You mentioned, I just want a quick rundown, and then I want to hear what you got to do to win. You talk about healthcare. You're all on board with a single payer, Medicare for all style program.
Yes. So, get to your question, what is it going to take to win? This can't. I sincerely believe we are in the Moneyball moment of politics, where there's just the traditional way of running campaigns is starting to become less effective. People are cutting the cord. These $750,000 ad buys on TV are not as effective as they used to be. For us, we've been lucky in that we've had really great response to calls for volunteers. And that means, canvassers, phone bankers, texters, any field operation. The way you win a district like mine is, frankly, I think the way Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did it in her district. It's a very similar district in a lot of ways, and it is a early and it is a strong field game because these districts have been ignored for so long by the incumbents that people knocking on the door, I get people saying, God bless you for coming by and asking me for my vote, that sort of stuff. And you've got these volunteers who are, usually also canvassing for Bernie Sanders, who I support, obviously, and I actually just publicly endorsed yesterday, coming out, and you've got that enthusiasm. You can't pay for that enthusiasm, right, at the door, and that sways people. And I think when you're and people know, we're humble about it. I don't expect anybody to give me their vote. I have to earn their vote. And the way I earn their vote is by showing up, by listening, and by promoting and supporting policies that help them, that help their family, that help their children, that help their children's future and our ability to survive on this planet, simply put.
So give us a sense. When is the primary, and how many doors do you have you knocked on? How many do you anticipate knocking on?
The primary is June 2nd here in New Jersey. We anticipate knocking on north of 35,000 doors.
Just with 45 seconds left, I mean, do you have is there a specific segment of the electorate in that district that you think has been, is your strategy to bring out people who haven't come before? What is it that you think that's going to push you over the edge?
I think, there's a couple of things. We know kind of where the pockets of progressivism are within the district based on an analysis. And we're definitely hitting the election for us is in the primary. The general election is sort of secondary to us right now, because if you win the primary, you've won the general. Right. And so we're really focusing on people who come out who have voted on primaries. I think anybody would in my position. So if they're smart.
Fascinating. All right. Well, good luck. The website is zinaforcongress.com. Folks can find out about your positions on a free public college option, about debt relief for public college, also your health care positions, obviously the environment. Real pleasure. Zina Spezakis, thank you so much for joining us today.